Hello there. Welcome to the third module of radio as broadcast medium. Let us have a short recap of what we learned in the previous module. So we learned about the definition of microphone pickup patterns, the types of directionality, and the 6 different types of polar patterns. Other than that, we also had a short glimpse of proximity effect. So in this session, we'll be learning about radio transmission. In module 3, we will be focusing on the meaning and functions of radio transmission, the two types of transmitters, which is amplitude modulated and frequency modulated one, the different sections present in a transmitter, which is audio frequency and radio frequency, and finally we will learn about what exactly is radio reception. So shall we dive in? Before we learn about the different types of transmitters, we should have a clear idea about what exactly happens in the process of transmission and what happens before transmission. So it requires the knowledge of the familiarity of two terms, which is modulation and radio transmission. What exactly is modulation? This is the process of converting data into radio waves by adding information to an electronic or optical carrier signal. And this carrier signal is one with a steady waveform of constant height or amplitude or frequency. So what is radio transmission? After the process of modulation, these radio waves are transmitted over long distances with the help of electronic circuits called transmitters. The simplest form of a transmitter consists of an oscillator generating a high frequency wave connected to an antenna. So the idea while explaining could have seemed quite complicated. This is simplified into a small diagram here. Okay, so here in this diagram, the data which is present could be song or any form of audio or images that travels through radio waves, and this process from data to radio wave is called as modulation. And this radio waves goes to the transmitter and then it travels to farther distances, and this second process is called as transmission. So this is the simplified idea of these two terms. So now let us learn about the two different types of transmitter. So let us focus on the first type, which is the amplitude modulated or AM transmitter. So the image gives here the block diagram of the amplitude modulated transmitter, which consists of two different sections, which is called the audio frequency or the AF section and the radio frequency or the RF section. Let us have an enlarged view of the whole process, how an amplitude modulated transmitter works. So the AF section of the transmitter, generally it generates the modulating wave or the signal. The conversion of sound energy into electrical energy is performed by the microphone. The electrical energy available from the microphone is very low. Hence, it is amplified through an amplifier. The output from the AF amplifier is fed to the AF power amplifier, and this power amplifier provides the required audio frequency power. And the output of the AF power amplifier is given to the modulator. A modulator is an electronic circuit with transistor and passive components which performs the process of modulation. This is the partial working of the amplitude modulated transmitter and the whole work of the AF section. So now let us learn what the other section in an amplitude modulated radio does. In the RF section, the high frequency carrier wave is generated by a crystal controlled oscillator. The output of the crystal controlled oscillator is power amplified by RF power amplifier. The buffer isolates the RF power amplifier from the oscillator, and this arrangement keeps the frequency of the crystal controlled oscillator as a constant. In the modulator, the RF wave and modulating AF signal are mixed to produce the amplitude modulated wave. and the output of this section is fed to the antenna for transmission. Thus, the whole process of amplitude modulated radio transmitter is complete. So this is how the whole function happens, and I hope you all are able to recollect who invented or began the AM radio. So can you try to refresh his name? Yes, it was Lee De Forest. Now let us move on to the next type of transmitter, which is frequency modulated or the FM radio transmitter. So this frequency modulated systems are operated usually at a frequency above 40 megahertz. Frequency modulated broadcasting is done in television sound, mobile radio, etc. The functional block diagram of an FM transmitter employing phase modulation is shown in the image here. And the phase modulation is essentially a frequency modulation. So let us have an enlarged view of this graph and study every process one by one. So this whole process consists of a crystal oscillator which produces the carrier wave, and the output of this is fed to the phase modulator. The buffer is a low frequency amplifier which isolates the crystal oscillator from the phase modulator. The modulating signal is produced from a microphone. Since this AF modulating signal has uneven power, it is fed into a network called pre-emphasis network, where all the frequencies in the modulating signal are made to have equal power. The output of the pre-emphasis network is then amplified and sent for phase modulation, and the modulated output is then power amplified using a power amplifier, and finally it is fed into the transmitting antenna for transmission. Thus the process of frequency modulated radio transmitter ends. Can you all try to think and recollect who was the person that introduced FM radio or the frequency modulated radio? Yes, it was Edwin Howard Armstrong. So now, as we have had a better idea of how the different types of transmitters work and all the process that is involved in it, let us move on to the final concept, which is radio reception. What is radio reception? A radio receiver has the function of selecting the desired signal from all the other unwanted signals, amplifying, demodulating it, and finally producing it in the desired manner. So any user from the receiving end trying to tune in to their favorite or their desired signal, that is called as radio reception. With this, we have come to the end of the third module of radio as broadcast medium. I am confident that you have received in-depth knowledge of how the process of radio transmission works. I'll meet you on another very interesting subject on the next video. Until then, take care.